good start.
Okay, very good. Welcome, everyone. Welcome this afternoon. I'm so pleased to see a nice audience here for LOUDMOUTHS, an autistic non-speakers rally. My name is Josh Heumann, and I'm the head of artistic engagement at Koffler Arts, just down the hall. So if you haven't seen this amazing installation by Adam Wolfond and his collaborators at Disassembly, please check it out right after this program. I'm going to start by introducing our three panelists and our facilitator moderator for today. And I'm going to start with William Tziavaris, from whom we got the title of today's program, LOUDMOUTHS. Yeah? So William Tziavaris is a non-speaking high school student in Toronto, Canada. He has written, directed, and performed comedy specials for his non-speaking friends, presented to international audiences. William is featured in award-winning films and documentaries, and he takes pride in supporting interesting projects in the disability community. To my left, your right, Massimo Bossi is 20 years old. He graduated with honors from high school. He is taking a one-year gap before starting a mathematics undergraduate degree. And right now, he's been learning computer programming, and he loves it, and defines himself as a romantic traveler. And the artist, we'll say director behind What If My Body Is a Beacon to the World, Adam Wolfond, man of autism, an author, artist, graduate student who recently defended successfully his MA thesis, and co-founder, co-director of Disassembly, Neurodivergent Arts Collective. He is non-speaking and uses an iPad text-to-speech application to communicate. He's contributed to academic journals and is a regular public speaker at universities and conferences. His interest is in neurodiverse ways of studying and collaborating, noting that mutual support is essential to access and creation. He's released 2 poetry chapbooks in 2019 with unrestricted interest. There is Too Much Music in My Ears and In Way of Music, Waters, Answers Toward Questions Other Than What is Autism. He's also released 2 poetry collections, The Wanting Way in 2022 by Milkweed Editions and Open Book in Ways of Water 2023 by Punctum Books. Both available here and available for purchase should you be interested. Our facilitator and moderator today is Dr. Estée Klar, an academic with a PhD in disability studies, an artist, a curator, a creative, and co-founder and co-director of Disassembly. So please take it away.
Thank you. I just want to start and thank you all for coming. Thank you to William and Georgina, his mother and communication support person, and to Sonia, Massimo's mother and communication support person. I think it's telling that moms are really at the lead of this communication movement, not the therapist. There's very little access for this way of support, which we call relational. And you can also purchase this as a dissertation that Adam and I collaborated on, and it's also for sale across the hall, available across the hall when this is finished. So we talk a lot about the relationality and how that's important in supporting the movement and communication of autistic people. So we're going to start. We want you to also participate in this rally, hopefully by asking questions. And because we talked about this and prepared a little bit in advance, I've got a couple of questions that I'm going to lead with, maybe to warm everybody up, including our non-speakers who may rally amongst themselves.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
first we're going to do, I know, first we're going to, don't worry, I got this. We're going to do some sharing of some creative works by William, Adam, and Massimo. So we'll start with that and then we'll proceed. So Kira, do you want to start Bluetoothing that?
All right, we're just going to go in order. William has a poem he would like to share first.
Yeah, he said he wanted to stand up, so I want to stand up.
This poem was written for Gary Gottfriedson. Typed with one hand. I certainly know who I am. I am happy to tell you to. Let me make you happy that you are not me. The boy that says nothing and must know nothing can do nothing and won't be teaching the class nothing. That guy. That guy that you never get to know. I certainly know him. I know his kind well. I know that I am, and I can, and I will, and I am. And thank God that I can, and I will, and I am, that I know who I am. I'm still certain I'm a guy, a thinking man who can type all the thoughts with one hand. These ways that I am are the ways of my clan. My clan, for all of us will, and our will has no way. And no say. Not today. Though I certainly love the will anyway. Thank you.
The next part is Adam Wolfond's Between.
Between. Openings, atmosphere, the meanings like needing air. Has the camera a way to language time? Of course. So does music. So inside of the leaving of neurotypical language is the movements, and the leaving of living meaningful relations that could change some persons to think about plants, and the basis of which the feeling thinking moves between them.
And next is a song from Massimo called I Still Trust Love.
I need your heart so much, so much. I thought I saw it so much, so much. I was wrong so much, so much. You're beautiful so much, so much. And I lost you so much, so much. And it was love, real love. I won't lose trust, lose trust, and love and real love. And I am here, still, I'm trying to keep going, still. I hope you were wrong, still. I live a dream, still. I won't forget, still. And it was love, real love. I won't lose trust in love and real love. I think what's next, I see your way, next, there is love, next, I'm not done, next, I still trust love, next, and it was love, real love, I won't lose trust, and love and real love. Yes, it was love, real love. I won't lose trust, and love and real love.
Have you ever heard that? Who did you collaborate on that with?
Sorry?
Who did you collaborate with that?
Yes, with unrestricted interest.
Unrestricted interest. Okay, so that's the same people who work on this their neurodiversity series with
Brian Laidlaw
Yeah.
is the singer.
Brian Laidlaw.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great, thank you, Massimo. I've never heard that song before that you did. Amazing. And William, thank you. I want to read one more thing that we're going to concentrate on a little bit with these guys. Something that Adam wrote many years ago. Language wants landings. Language wants answers about autism. I want sometimes to be free of words. I want to move. My art thinks about movement to give people ideas of how I don't always answer in words. Support understands how the assembly of ticking is like talking, and I language movement. So to that, I thought we'd start with a little bit about languaging, because Adam wanted to talk about that first. So to William, so how this rally is going to go is, this is Massimo's first time in front of an audience. So, you know, we are going to allow bodies to do what they need to do, and at whatever pace we need to do it. And how we kind of work with inclusive strategies, if you will, is to inclusion and accessibility happens organically. So we're going to see how this flows. And William has done a bit more presentation, especially being in front of your high school classes, I'm sure. And Adam has had a bit more experience as well in panels. So, William, Massimo, Adam.
Do you see him stimming?
What ways do you engage with neurotypical forms of language to cater to able-bodied speaking people? Can you share the pros and cons of shaping language for speakers to understand? I'll start with that. We're all on speakers, so I'm going to let people, we might end up talking over each other a little bit, but that's fine.
Okay, message.
And I can always silence if we're talking over.
Meaning.
The way that I express language internally doesn't always sound too accessible to my listener.
Atmospheres. The language in which my body goes uses the ways like attentions to meaning that makes lines varied and that brings me games of the speech act rhetoric that means little for autistics like me who make meaning with the atmospheres.
I'll start with Adam. Yeah. The language in which my body goes uses the ways like attentions to meaning that makes lines varied, and that brings me games of the speech act rhetoric that means little for autistics like me who make meaning with the atmospheres. Yep, go ahead.
Massimo wrote the
I am thinking that I don't need to adapt at all.
Wonderful. Thanks for
Yeah.
What's my problem? I always think about accessibility of other people.
That goes with the first part.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Go ahead. Thanks, William.
The way that I express language internally doesn't always sound too accessible to my listener. Thought's my problem. I always think about accessibility of other people.
Yeah, that's a big problem. Do you want to say something about that and start a rally?
Yes, I think that the accessibility is not thinking about autistic forms of thinking and the ways of man of autism's movements.
Yes, I think that the accessibility, William, he's answering you, is not thinking about autistic forms of thinking and the ways of man of autism's movements.
I should be more like Massimo and Adam.
Yeah, how so? What do you mean by that?
So, can we, Massimo said this.
I think accessibility shouldn't be my job. I am the disabled.
I'm too much worried about getting my message across.
So I'm too much worried about getting my message across.
Okay. I want to go to, again, Massimo's question about school. And Massimo wanted to talk about school and the experience of school. So I want to ask you, I want to begin by a quote from Tito Mukhopadhyay, who's also a non-speaking autistic author and uses supportive communication. He said, even the doubt in someone's eyes is school. Even the doubt in someone's eyes is school. Do you want to speak a little bit about school experiences and people who are watching you in this, you brave young men, in this environment where this method of communication is not really seen by a lot of people? Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, I'll do it.
Yes, I really want to talk about the ways language is the way that people decide if landing neurotypically the way of speaking is associated with intelligence.
I really want to talk about the ways language is the way that people decide if landing neurotypically the way of speaking is associated with intelligence.
The greatest challenge in my life is showing up to a place where others don't want me. Association worries them.
I'd like to encourage any questions to rally with these guys here. So if you have anything, just put up your hand and I will try to pace it. Yeah.
What associations are you talking about?
Yeah.
I finished high school and entered 5 universities, but I can't attend in person because they don't allow family members to support me.
It's a big problem. Adam has a few support people, but it's really difficult to find people who want to do this work. So that's something you need to know when we're 3 mothers sitting up here. Do you want to say anything to that one, Raleigh, Massimo?
Yes, I think. Yes, I think that having a support person buttresses the relation of trust that paces to feeling that my body needs paces the way that music's people in the ways of needing open thinking giving me access to neurotypical communication.
I think that having a support person buttresses the relation of trust that paces to feeling that my body needs. Pace is the way that music's people in the ways of needing open thinking, giving me access to neurotypical communication. That's interesting. Yes.
I'm wondering, in that statement, what does pace mean to you?
What does pace mean to you? You use it a lot. Go for it.
Pace is language. Pace is the ways of the movement in the world and that I pay attention to and that feels the ways that I language so think in the ways of that patterns is sometimes thinking and sometimes feeling way that can compose language.
I'll read it again. Pace is the way of movement in the world and that I pay attention to and that feels the ways that I language. So think in the ways of water that patterns a sometimes thinking and sometimes feeling way that compose language. So Adam talks about that as a languaging. Yeah. You ready?
Yeah. He's got 2 thoughts and then he's answering the question after
Great.
his first couple sentences. You can go ahead now. Okay, just
But there's no place I would rather be. As the years go by, I sense some love from classmates. I think having me in class makes some people worry about us being associated with each other. High school is tough for all students socially. Students aren't all assholes, but they're all anxious about social status.
It's true. Thanks for that, William. William, have you thought about what you want to study next? Yes.
I wonder if you please read this statement and use the word pace.
Yes, I can. Pace, so you got to follow the pace here. Pace is the way of the movement in the world and that I pay attention to. And that feels the ways that I language. So think in the ways of water and So think in the ways of water that patterns a sometimes thinking and sometimes feeling that can compose language. Yeah.
Also the previous statement that introduced the word pace. Please.
Yes. Okay. I think that having a support person buttresses the relation of trust that paces to feeling that my body needs. Pace is the way that music's people, the ways of needing open thinking, giving me access to neurotypical communication. And Adam, if I'm right, you're speaking about the pace also between your communication partner, your support person? I think this needs lots more clarification on pace, so here.
Well, yes, pace is the feeling of the artful atmospheres and the mood and the spaces that in my body I feel, and that means that making ways of languaging in autistic ways needs my partner to attune as well.
Pace is the feeling of the artful atmospheres and the mood and the spaces that in my body I feel. And that means that making ways of languaging in autistic ways needs my partner to attune as well. I'm just going to maybe give some perspective on that because Adam and I, when we talk about attunement, I have to also attune to the mood in the room and what Adam may be attending to. So that's something you don't obviously see among us, but I can also feel his stiffening or whatever's happening in the body, to the stimuli around us. Yeah.
Okay. So answering the question.
How are we doing?
How are
we doing?
Do you have
So Massimo, you want to read it?
Yeah.
I started to communicate when I was 15. I repeated one-on-one numbers correspondence endlessly in school, meaning like in school they do like 5 corresponds to 5 objects. So that's what he did until he was 15. Then when he started to communicate, showed way advanced math skills. So he said, now I have been admitted to Math University, and this is a traumatic experience, and I'm not the responsible one. And then he's asking a question to the audience, what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
Not that you need to answer.
What makes it, did you say traumatic?
He said traumatic, yeah.
What makes it a traumatic experience?
Yeah, what makes it a traumatic experience? Let's see.
So you can work on that, and then we'll move to William.
That's one question. What about what he wants to do?
Good question. School has really opened my mind to so many ideas. I like too many subjects. Because of my motor differences, I will have some limitations.
Are there any questions so we're going to let them type to communicate now, and any other questions right now that Adam might be able to answer while they're working on it?
Yeah, I guess I'll ask
Yeah,
Adam a
thanks.
question. So of course, Adam, you've written poetry, you've done public speaking, public communicating, you've made visual art, you've made film. What's next?
I have about what's next. The answer is that man of autism wants to know more about games in which the annihilation of feeling uses language and how I feel about the demands of talks and the different ways thinking can be expressed.
I feel like that's an invitation to all of us. He says, the thinking I have about what's next. The answer is that man of autism wants to know more about games in which the annihilation of feeling uses language, and how I feel about the demands of talks and the different ways thinking can be expressed.
So
Yeah.
Massimo answered your question, and he said, he wrote, what do you think? Try for a day, then ask me again. I don't know if it's... The question was what was traumatic about, I guess, correspondence, doing correspondence one-on-one in school for 15 years. And that's his answer.
Is it try for a day?
Try for a day.
He said, try for a day and then ask me again.
Are you familiar with that context of how autistic people are treated in schools?
Yeah.
Yeah, so okay, so some are not, so we'll put that into a bit of context, that people will maybe teach to you to name, because oralism, speaking, is so privileged in our society. It's able-bodiedness, if you will, or ableism. Kids are often taught from a very young age to a very old age to say, you've got to say, what's this? Cat. Say it again, cat. But if you can't do it consistently over days, you're going to be repeating that exercise well into your adulthood, whilst in the meantime you can access different ways of study, right? Like there's just so much more to be done. But that's what autistic people are confronted with right now, right, William? Yeah.
Did you want to say?
Yeah, in the case of math, which is Massimo's main passion, basically he was always asked to, there was this idea that he needed to master the concept of one-on-one correspondence, so it was always like numbers 1 to 10 and objects, and so basically until you don't master like 4 is 4 objects, you are not allowed to go to the next step with operations, or and now he studied functions and logarithms and like so. But for 15 years, we couldn't basically step forward. So I guess it's still in his
So that
mind.
In Canadian system of applied behavioral therapy, as an autistic person, you have to be as neurotypical or as close to neurotypicality or like your neurotypical peers before you're even given access at all. So, what we're doing is we're trying to rethink how we study. But William, you're in school, so you have a lot to say about this right now. Did you want to share? Did you?
Some extra, I think it's talking about his future.
Oh, okay. Can we hear about your future?
It's just going on about
Go.
his limitations.
Okay.
I learned about Stephen Hawking this year and realized I may need to be some kind of theorist as opposed to a hands-on guy.
A theorist.
Theorist. That might be true. If you had to, I'm going to just try and invite you to think about this. If you were to create your ideal study environment, what would it look like?
People. Yes, I will saturate the ways of feeling with the ways of feeling, and that means that the neurodiverse way needs me pacing the way in which we think about physical needs and making a knowledge by autistic people.
Okay. I will saturate the ways of feeling with the ways of feeling. I like that. And that means that the neurodiverse way needs me, pacing the way in which we think about physical needs and making a knowledge by autistic people. Yeah. Sorry.
So Massimo is tired. He just said no segregation, he wrote.
No segregation, yeah.
Mic drop.
I think he's done.
He's tired, but still like, no segregation.
It's a consensus of words.
So I'm going to just say a few words. Yeah, oh yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So, I just want to make sure I understand properly about, so it seems like from listening to listening to the communication that you had between the three of you, that what you need is the barriers to be broken down between school so that you can communicate. What I thought was really interesting that Adam just said through you, through his communication device with you, was that, and listening to Massimo communicate, that we need your help in allowing us to understand what you need at school so that you can succeed. And you want to do that in a way that's not segregated, so that you're working together with everyone else. That there's no barriers between whether you're neurodiverse or neuronormal, whatever it is. It should just be everyone together. And I think that, there's lots of types of invisible neurodiversities, and even academia struggles to accommodate those. And I think what we need is people like you guys to help us move forward education for you guys. Like you're leaders. It seems to me this has been really helpful. I'm a professor at U of T, and I'd love to be able to break down the barriers for people like you. So I just want to make sure I heard right what you're trying to communicate.
Yes. Yes, I think that making access also needs the way of diversity, and that means the schools need nice people to open the varied ways of perception and ways of knowing things that give different orientations, like always slanted, ceaseless movements that body me.
Yes, I think that making access also brings needs the way of diversity. And that means the schools need nice people to open the varied ways of perception and ways of knowing things that give different orientations, like always slanted, ceaseless movements that body me. In our studio, when we study together, we have bean bags and we let people, lie down on the floor, sleep. Like, we don't assume that attention is like with desks looking at people, right? We just want people to be in the room and participate, and there's a lot that happens when we let that happen.
I was just saying to Kira that my mother studied education. My mother's now 81, so she was studying education in the late 50s or the 60s in the United States. And during one of the first developmental psychology classes as part of the program, the professor explained that years 1 and 2, first and second grades, the whole point in pedagogy at that stage was simply to teach children that there are times when they have to sit still and times when they can play. And so our exchange here in Whispers was that sounds like getting people ready to sit in their little cubicles or at their little desks, and that it really plays into the whole sort of capitalist, Fordist notion of training people to do one thing from 9 to 5 and then go and live the rest of your life.
I think you have to push it. Oh. Hold on. I turned down the volume. I forgot about that.
And there's another.
Okay. This way, another reason why you need a communication partner.
the ideal study environment for me. It's not the way that should be for everyone who is autistic. Universal design is another field that I wish to explore. Support is a major issue for us, so our space must accommodate the support.
So I guess that raises a question in my mind. Is the whole concept of universal design really a fiction? That really we need individual design, such as a program that Adam just participated in at Concordia, like something that is as individualized as possible to take into account different learning styles and.
It is and it isn't. Like everybody is different, and I think that you can't legislate safe spaces. You can't legislate, accommodations in the sense that it's I keep on returning to the word legislated by the university. It doesn't work that way. You have to come together and figure it out together in the room, in the actual room, and it becomes a much richer experience for everybody involved. I mean, you might, in one of the classes right now, there's a deaf-blind person, so there's lots of touch involved in deaf-blind communication. There's a non-speaking autistic person. There are other people who have different diversities, neurodivergent people. So, it works, but you come together and figure it out together. And, so we call that like emergent processes, and I think that's, schools and universities want a top-down form rather than the other way around. Yeah. I'm trying not to talk too much because I can. So.
Well, it's also because universities, like you're talking about making workers, the universities, as we all know, are capitalistic. So when you introduce an idea of nuance, for example, one particular student or a series of students or everybody, it's not efficient. So it's not the most productive way to be in terms of like production. So there's the incentive has to be like pushed.
Yeah. Something happened to the university, right? Something happened, and it became corporatized. That's what happened, right? And so, like it does. I'm using that word again. Legislates. It dictates what kind of form you write in. Like think about even the art exhibition in the 70s. There weren't artist statements necessarily back then, but now we're all making it. Because of the MFA programs, you had to go through the crit, and you articulate it in kind of those ways that are demanded. So like we talk about the ways intelligibility, forms, capitalism, like they really. Conflated, really, and it doesn't allow for different forms of expression at all, or different ways of knowing. Sorry, and I think I cut you off. I apologize.
No, you're just speaking to it. Yeah, and there was something that Adam said before, Adam communicated before, that was about, how I interpret it as about embodiment. Yeah, you kept saying, when you were talking about pace, you kept talking about like embodiment, and to me I was like, oh, you're talking about knowledge. So that's how I interpret it. So like, what if the university, your requirement was to embody, especially if you're somebody who is on a spectrum of people that are communicating through the body, with the body. And something that Adam, you were saying before about at the very beginning about like you knowing, I'm like terribly paraphrasing you, but I'm just remembering, but like you knowing, but then you having to like regurgitate that in a way that able-bodied people might understand, but you know even if they don't understand what you're talking about. So I think embodiment as knowledge is like an interesting thing.
Need. Makings. need a meaning that same ways can alter feeling towards ways of knowing in artistic makings.
Need a meaning that same ways can alter feeling towards ways of knowing in artistic makings. I sort of think you're talking about, we need different ways of expression, and languaging and all of it. Maybe we can, we study literature, we study different ways of knowing. Why not autistic ways of knowing? I'm listening, you guys, I'm talking too much. Anything you want to say,
William
Lori?
responded to Josh about universal design.
That's a thought I consider, Josh, but I need to learn about universal design before I circumflex can improve it or criticize. There's so much to study and not in your time.
Sorry, it pronounced a circumflex. That was in there by accident. So we said before, that's a thought I consider, Josh, but I need to learn about universal design before I can improve it or criticize. There's so much to study and not enough time.
There is,
And
yes.
Massimo responded to you, and he said, he wrote, "Hey, I was admitted to U of T too. I didn't like my conversation with the Accessibility Services Office. Lots of talking about the risk of cheating if I come with a communication partner. All these efforts for cheating, I was disappointed. I can help you, but open more doors, please, before."
We're from U of T, and I've witnessed personally classmates needing accessibility, and it's been heartbreaking, it's been depressing. So your sentiment is spot on.
Thank you for supporting. I mean, not that it was the only one negative experience, but just because.
There's such a distrust in the university to say that, what you're here, but it's better to give everybody an A, and everybody who wants to be there will be there, and they will learn.
Yeah, I mean, I often wonder if, at Platonic symposia, I mean, there weren't letter grades. So we, I mean,
What?
Yeah. So it's again, it's part of this, capitalist drive to succeed and to be number one and to be productive, and who's more productive gets an A and who's less productive gets a C, and it's how about we aim to share knowledge and then use that knowledge in good ways.
Right.
It helps everyone.
Right.
The first university in Morocco, in the world, you used to be awarded your ijaza or your degree when your teacher decides you've learned enough from them. So it's never about grades. Who gets this bell curve? You score people in a bell curve.
But for these guys, it's more about the recognition of this kind of communication. I think it's more specific than opening education in all sorts of ways. I appreciate those sentiments, but it's a lot about the way that this kind of communication is recognized or not, and it's mostly delegitimized, and it's mostly not recognized or not promoted at all in the public sphere. And that seems to be the biggest change that absolutely needs to happen, and that I do think is kind of top down.
Yeah, I think paradoxically too, but you can see how difficult it can be for people to use this mode of communication to communicate in the same language. I think sometimes you use the word same in that context, and we have to think about that as well. What are the other creative ways that you might want to share knowledge outside of language, which is why art became an interesting form to explore together. But it's still very text-based when we have sessions together.
Well, also, Massimo mentioned earlier that there was, if I'm remembering correctly, you're not allowed to have support either in certain ways. I don't know if that's because they think it's not you doing the work.
Partly.
So there's even almost some kind of, suspicion around that support. I mean, I'm impressed that Concordia accommodated, if we can call it that, the Adam's support systems during his degree.
Yep. Yeah, but
if you can't acknowledge the support systems, that's seem like a problem there.
We also have
If
to,
that's what you're saying, Massimo, that they would not accommodate support.
yeah, same is true for the deaf-blind community in the university just as much because it involves touch, and the question always is, and Adam doesn't always need touch, but for these long, moments, he does. And as soon as you touch somebody in our culture, it's really demonized, right? And it's not good. And deaf-blind communication is also suspect because who's doing the translating into our language? It's the communication partner. So it's why I like the device that you can hear somebody's voice. I mean, it sort of satisfies that. But the other thing we want to talk about too is the question that we asked about the how would you create the classroom? And we have like a Western way of thinking about knowledge that we're delivered, right? And we consume that. But there's other knowledges that we need to have access to from other cultures, indigeneity, from other parts of the world. And we're not really
Well, in accommodating visual culture too, I think if I can make reference to Adam's exhibition, which seems to be about atmosphere and pace and languaging in a non-verbal way. And I know working in the arts, sometimes I feel like neurotypical people are visually illiterate. But we don't seem to be too worried about that somehow. Where Adam, at least in the case of what I've seen and in this exhibition, seems to have some very sophisticated visual, atmospheric, and pacing literacy that's beyond neurotypical and limited neurotypical visual vocabulary.
Yeah. I think that's because we're taught to perceive and consume in a particular way. And I agree that, we call it attunement. We call it autistic attunement or just general attunement to things that we take for granted in the world. We're really not taught to look, hear, see. We're taught to really go from point A to point B. And not think about it. Grab our coffee in the morning, we know that we're going to work, we disassociate often from the atmospheres around us, in part because we don't have the time, right? So I think that really, autistic perception has taught me, with other autistic people, that there are many ways of looking at the world and really honing in on this detail that we're taking for granted. And sometimes I think a lot with Adam about physics and how we think about quantum physics, and it's something that we're looking into right now. Some of these kind of coalesce, these concepts seem to complement one another.
Yeah, and the visual and atmospheric relationships and pacing, this is so much around us, and yet it is nothing taught in any way, yet at least what I can only really refer to Adam, who I've worked with, in this visual atmospheric way. I understand that there's, visions and things that are there and yet unseen by neurotypicals. Because we are not educated in that or to be paying attention, or, as you mentioned, block out a lot of information that Adam and other autistic people actually have access to.
Yeah, we call it backgrounding, foregrounding. So, and neurotypicality is not necessarily a person; it's really an idea. It's an idea that as I said, it can coalesce with neoliberalism, capitalism, these ways of thinking about the world and the ways that we're taught. But the backgrounding and foregrounding concept is that you're alluding to is we can background a lot in dominant perception. We can background and filter out a lot of that detail. And for not all autistics, not all autistic people are the same, but there is no subtraction. It's coming at you. It's a foregrounding of the environment and luring into all of these directions. So, you know, we think about that together as a group and how that reorients us all.
Well, we construct our own pace, our own atmospheres, so why shouldn't that?
Yeah.
Ain't that right, Adam?
He's getting tired at the end of the day. This end of the day, mornings are always better.
He's not more
And
tired.
he's like,
than I
no,
am right
no,
now.
I'm not doing it, no. William and Massimo.
I think he's done.
You're done. I get it. I totally get it.
Sonia, I wonder, there was that question that Massimo had asked us earlier.
Yes.
And I would love to still rally with that if there's time.
Yeah.
Do you think you could repeat it to us?
Okay, so what was the question? Did I, sorry. Yeah, what do you think about, do you remember what was related about, oh yes, so it's, I don't remember, do you not remember what was related to it?
Was it about the traumatic experience in school?
I think it was just before that, and it was about, do you have notes here?
Yeah.
Because it was about being admitted to
Oh yeah, it was
university.
like, this is a traumatic experience, like when he was talking about the correspondence 101, and then he said, this is traumatic experience and I'm not the responsible one. What do you think? Like, I don't know, like what he meant with the question.
And like, can you just contribute? Like, I guess I've been thinking about that since you asked. I just wanted to make sure. I guess like the closest thing that came up in my mind was like, I guess you could say I like loosely studied / explored this like Soviet prison at one point, and like it was right after they changed techniques from like physical to psychological torture as a means of like information extraction, and one of like the main techniques that they were using that I understood was like neurological deprivation. So like basically boring someone out of their mind to like death or like information extraction. And like that's what came from my mind when we were describing that. And like I've heard stories of how people survive that, and like just a massive amount of creativity and like self-stimulation on their mind to survive that kind of experience. And you're describing for 15 years. And I guess it made me curious, like, what techniques you came up with to survive that experience. But also, you don't have to answer now if it's like that. Yeah.
That's a wonderful question.
Yeah.
What techniques did you develop to survive?
He does.
No? Okay, he doesn't want to.
What strategies?
About being in special education, sitting there in special education, and
Wow.
everything going on for him while this situation played out.
In a very like pop culture kind of way, in a totally different context, so I apologize if this seems really strange. But I think of Geoffrey Rush in the movie about the Marquis de Sade, when he was locked away in the Bastille, and denied reading material, denied writing material because his writings were being smuggled out, and of course they were considered so heretical and so on. And so he looked for every other possible means to continue to write because he had that compulsion. And it's like where there's a will, there's a way. What happens if they break your will? Then do you find a way? Yeah.
That is the aim of applied behavioral therapy. It's just by what it says about positive reinforcement, it's really breaking the will, autistic will. Please say something. No. Okay, we're done.
William was responding to your comments.
Okay.
Hope you're done.
That's the point I was trying to make. We task ourselves with accommodating and pandering to the visually and sensory illiterate neurotypicals. It's such hard work and doubly energy required to do it.
Energy. Double energy.
That's the point I was trying to make. We task ourselves with accommodating and pandering to the visually and sensory illiterate neurotypicals. It's such hard work and doubly energy required to do it.
Well, are there any more questions? I think everybody here is really brave, and you've been wonderful at going along with the pace here of this kind of communication. So thank you all for coming, and thank you. Massimo's typing something, so we'll just wait for that.
I want to speak for myself and just say that it didn't, despite the things that each of you have said, this didn't feel like, I didn't feel like I was sat here, like, I wasn't like impatiently waiting for anything. Like, you guys set the stage, and it was like an invitation to like listen in a different way, and to like comprehend in a different way. So it didn't feel like, it felt like an opportunity, as opposed to some kind of limitation, restriction. Like for me, like I was, when Adam started typing or signing into the iPad, my dyslexic brain was like, oh, I can't piece the sentences together. It was before it was like the first sentence. I couldn't piece the sentences together because the words were too far apart, and I started thinking I would write it down on my phone, and I realized that it was going to be read out quicker and you would repeat it and that kind of thing. So like, for me as somebody who struggled in school a lot, I thought it was really incredible, and then we started talking about school, a really incredible way to like be given information in like many different ways, so that many different people, again, I'm only speak for myself, could understand it in many different ways. So like, sometimes when you read it, it gave me different information to when it was spread out, to when it was condensed and on computer books. Like, it gave different angles, and it was like an opportunity. The way to imagine that a conversation is not just somebody says something, somebody else says something else. Like the idea that it opened up and it created this like shape in the room of being like, oh right, we're feeding back to that other question that happened before, even though somebody answered a different question in the meantime. Like, it really felt like an opportunity. It really felt like, whilst we're talking about school, like what if a classroom were to what typically look like that and function like that, and like I just found it like really like quite moving, because school is so restrictive. Yeah. So like, it was a really nice way to approach listening and asking questions, thinking. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you. That's how I feel.
We should rally and tether again.
Yeah. Totally.
Yes, so Massimo, just forgot your name. Ellen, sorry, I know you so well. So, he wrote, I didn't die, so I survived. Surviving is not living a full life. I am a happy person now. So maybe strategies next time.
I'm glad you felt that, and that's referred to pace. You know, there's so many different paces, and you call it shape, and that was beautiful the way you said that. So thank you. That's how I feel on this side of it too. You know, like feeling that shaping happening. You know, I'm going with that flow as a supporter.
William said, "Thank God, Massimo."
Yeah.
Do you have any? Did you write anything else, or is that it?
Just a little bit quicker, so.
Yeah. Go for it.
I'm done.
Done. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Massimo, William, and Adam for doing this today. It was really wonderful. Thank you. Kira, do you want to announce?
Yeah, so I'm just going to say,
this?
so the gallery's still open in another 10 minutes, so if you haven't been in, please take a look. It's just a little down the hall to the right. And the exhibition remains on view until Sunday at 5 o'clock, so Saturday and Sunday noon to 5. So please tell all your late coming friends that they should catch it before it closes. Meanwhile, if you're interested in copies of Adam's books, right across the hall. And they're really incredible, so please consider buying a copy.